The House 2 was an old flash horror game that entranced a whole generation with its use of jump scares, much like The Maze. It was a point-and-click game made by SINTHAI Studios in 2010, and it's no surprise that the House 2's visuals is the strongest aspect of this game. Because if you didn't know, SINTHAI Studios is a company that makes UI designs, branding, and animations for new or existing companies. And the whole reason they probably made the House series was to advertise their service. It's really quite genius when you think about it, but how does the House 2 hold up today? Well, that's why we're going back and taking a look at the story, gameplay, and visuals to see what holds up today and what aged like sour milk. But first, make sure to stab the bell icon so you don't miss out on more Devilish videos like this one. With that said, let's get right into it. Starting off with the story, you explore a house in a small town that has been closed and left empty for decades. The house used to belong to the Roche or Rosine family? Honestly, I have no idea if that's an N or H. Either way, the father, mother, and daughter, along with their maid, were all found dead from what appeared to be suicide. But when you enter the house and explore its mysteries, you start to get the full picture. When you enter the living room, you find notes from the maid with her talking about getting weird feelings from the house, and how she found out the family's so-called daughter is actually an adopted orphan. Going into the bathroom, you also find a note from the father asking God to forgive him for killing their kid. And in the bedroom, you find the adoption papers for their daughter Nicole. You also find evidence that Nicole has been interacting with some kind of spirit that resembles a young girl. After looking around the bedroom, you investigate the workroom and find a bottle of poison filled with nitric acid. You also find a birth certificate and a photograph of a baby named Alrina, confirming what the maid has said in her letter. Continuing forward, you enter the safe room, which, funny enough, is not safe in the slightest. It's actually the most dangerous room in the house. In this room, you have to figure out the code to open the safe, which happens to be 1947, the birth year of Alrina. By opening the safe, you get attacked by Alrina herself, and she is now free to live again. This would be the end of the game, but you get a key to a special room taking you to a letter explaining the story in more detail. You find out the maid was killed before she could learn more about the blood-related daughter. It doesn't say who or how, but she was killed. You also find out that somehow, even though the adoption papers is in the same room where Nicole sleeps, she had no idea that she wasn't blood-related to her family at all. The real kicker is when you learn that Alrina was killed because the mother and father didn't think she could have a future worth living with her disabilities. And for some reason, they decided to stuff her body into the safe instead of, I don't know, burying her somewhere. I mean, really, so many better ways to get rid of a body. Not speaking from personal experiences, of course. I mean, even Afton's idea was better than this, but I digress. Apparently, when they adopted Nicole, she started seeing the ghost of Alrina and would spend time with her. The parents also started seeing Alrina getting reminded of the horrible acts they committed upon their daughter. Their guilt became so much that it caused the father and mother, and somehow Nicole, to commit suicide. And that's the lovely story of the House 2. As you can tell, there are a lot of plot holes in the story, but we'll get to that soon, right after we talk about the gameplay. Like I've said before, this game is a point-and-click horror game where you explore an abandoned house. And throughout the game, you explore each room of the house, clicking on random objects that slowly share the story of what happened. Sometimes small events will even occur after clicking on certain objects, making for an interesting experience. What I like most about the gameplay is how certain objects you click on will block parts of the screen, making you skeptical of what could pop up behind them. It's a really good way to add tension to a point-and-click game that I haven't really seen before. However, I do think some of the jump scares are really cheesy and lack the tension and build-up to really make you scared. Also, the sound quality is really lacking and has definitely aged poorly. Although, you just can't go wrong with whoever is playing that sweet 4-key piano loop. I mean, just listening to it brings me back to 2010. Overall, I think the biggest problem with the gameplay is just how repetitive it gets. You'll find yourself clicking on the same object over and over again till something new happens, and you do this for each room. So by the time you get to the grand finale, you're already uninterested in the game. Maybe if some more mechanics had been added in to keep it interesting, I wouldn't have felt so bored towards the end. But even though the game kinda fails in the gameplay department, It really excels with the visuals. I have not seen a point-and-click game look like this in a long time, and if I'm wrong, please let me know because I need more of these. There's just something so mysterious and gritty about the style of the house too. It feels so cursed and eerie that you just can't help but feel a little creeped out playing the game. It's not just black and white photos. There was some actual thought put into this style. If you go on YouTube and watch the behind the house too, you'll see just how much they've altered the pictures and how they added artificial objects and shadows that enhance the overall feel of the environment. It's truly a great representation of SINTHAI Studio. Another interesting thing I found was the jump scare from the bedroom is an edited version of Steel Ghost's famous picture named Seriously Scary. And if you were on the internet in the early 2000s, you would know this picture was used in a lot of internet media. It seems he's also made a lot of other famous pictures that have circled around the internet as well. I highly suggest checking him out. It was a nice trip down memory lane, and I'll make sure to leave a link down below if you're interested. But back to the visuals, like I said, it's a really unique look and it's something I haven't really seen before. I'd love to see more point-and-click games like this, or better yet, a full-fledged 3D horror game that matches this style. I think it would be possible to do with how realistic games I've been getting lately, and it would certainly captivate an audience. Overall, these visuals carry the game and, in my opinion, is what made the game so popular back when it released. This game is very rough around the edges and has unfortunately aged poorly. The story has a lot of plot holes for starters. Like, why did Nicole commit suicide with her family? Was she forced or tricked into doing it somehow? And how the hell did she not see the adoption papers on the wall in the room where she obviously spends a lot of time in? And what about the maid? How was she killed and who was she killed by? And the biggest question of all is, how is the documentation and evidence left in the house if there was a report of what happened when they were all found dead? Did the investigators just not give a damn? As you can see, the story is half-baked and wasn't fleshed out at all. The gameplay feels the same way. You just click on random objects till something happens the whole time. Why couldn't we have had a puzzle to solve, or better yet, have to use a flashlight to defend off the ghost of Alrina while we click on these items? Imagine the possibilities with how some objects take up a lot of space on the screen. The gameplay could have been so much better. But instead, I feel like a blind person looking for their damn keys. And the jump scares are lacking too. Most of them feel cheesy and the build-ups last way too long, making it easy to know when a jump scare is going to pop up. Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of fond memories of playing this game. In fact, it was the very first horror game I ever played. So for that reason, it will always hold a special place in my heart because it's what's led me on this adventure of playing horror games. But unfortunately, this game just does not hold up well to the current horror games we have today. But I'll always remember this game and what impact it has left on me. If you enjoyed this video and need more Devilish content, take a deep dive into the behind-the-scenes horrors of my Patreon. Or maybe continue the nostalgia trip and learn why Tattletale became forgotten. I promise you won't regret it. With that said, see you next time.